Hey guys, Foxdrop here with the video on the absolute best champions in the jungle for the current patch, patch 6.6. This video was actually a little trickier to make for this specific patch, as there are actually a butt ton of really decent junglers right now, so choosing the top 5 was really not that easy. Remember guys, the champions I'll be listing in this video are by no means the only good junglers around right now, and as always, you're much better off playing a champion you enjoy and that you're good at, rather than simply choosing something from this video just because I told you that it's a good choice. Anyway, the first champion worth mentioning here is Kindred. Now Kindred is one of those champions who is really solid in the early game specifically and can pretty much suffocate and drown out enemy teams within the first 10 minutes of play. Her ganking, her clears and her dueling are all really solid, and there isn't really anyone who can go toe to toe with Kindred pre-level 6. The thing with Kindred, and this is a common theme among strong junglers, is that the majority of her kit is focused around the concept that she doesn't really rely on an ultimate. So she's pretty much always functioning at full capacity, and never has a period of time when she's significantly weak. She can be a little tricky to play the later the game goes on, especially if you didn't get fed or if you didn't get many of your passive stacks, but overall Kindred is a solid choice and really strong right now. If you want more information on how to play Kindred specifically, I've done a champion guide for her which I'll put on the screen now and also link to in the description. Now the next champion on this list is Gragas. It feels like we've taken the time machine hopped back to the Cinderhulk days where the fat man was by far the strongest and one of the most irritating champions to play against. Funnily enough, Gragas has made his glorious return without actually leaning on that Cinderhulk at all, instead favouring the runic echoes. He's someone whose damage is impressively high in the early game, considering he then seamlessly transitions into one of the strongest tanks later on. His gank pressure, his ability to make picks with E/R, and his overall big belly and teamfights make him really hard to play against at all stages of the game. Again, if you have any interest in learning more about how to play Gragas, I have done a guide which I'll link to down below. Though if you're watching this video fresh off the press, that Gragas video isn't actually out yet, but it will be soon. TM. Next up we have someone who was difficult for me to decide on whether they belonged in this list or not, Lilli. Now if you'd asked me a week ago before this recent patch who the top junglers were, I'd have said Lilli was up there hands down. However, this dominant pussycat did get a bit of smashing this patch, so much so that you'd have thought that Riot recently took on James Dean. Now this change made it harder to jungle with Lilli, specifically with her early clears, as her abilities no longer root jungle monsters. Despite this though, good Lilli players have found ways to still clear efficiently without having to worry about that. After all, it only really affects her in the very early game. There is a video on it, though it's not mine, which does show you how to do this. I'll also link to that down below as well. And of course, the reasons why Lilli is still really good haven't changed at all. Crazy damage and disgusting clears once she gets that runic echoes, and she preys on enemy junglers more than the Toronto media preyed on Phil Kessel. She makes their lives a misery and threatens them with pretty much wherever they go. Her late game is a little tough though, especially if she goes up against multiple tanky targets, but her early and mid game more than make up for that. The fourth and next champion on this list is a newcomer, Savannah. Savannah is a champion who is not only strong by themselves, but who also abuse the OP Titanic Hydra build. Last patch, Savannah had by far the highest win rate of all junglers, but she also did get nerfed a tad. Honestly, it was nothing too significant in my opinion, but we also saw those indirect nerfs with Titanic Hydra getting toned down. Now, I wasn't really sure if this would bring Savannah down to insignificant status, but looking at her stats after the recent patch, it seems as though her win rate has stayed somewhat similar. And the reason why the Half Dragon is so good right now is because she controls the jungle, objectives, and in turn the whole game extremely effectively, while also being very tanky. The Devourer Titanic build also gives her pretty significant offensive upsides, making her able to 1v1 pretty much anyone in the game. Her teamfight capabilities aren't quite the same as the other top junglers, but just by being tanky and by always being able to take on enemy carries by herself, she still poses a decent threat. Now the last champion here is going to be Udyr. Now he was far and away the best jungler 2 patches ago, and last patch he saw nerfs to not only himself, but also to the items he liked to build. Most notably Runic Echoes, Dead Man's Plate and Swiftness Boots. At the time I thought this would be the end of Udyr's dominance. I mean that is a lot of nerfs in one patch. But it seems that he stayed around and proved to be very tenacious in his quest to bear slap everything in his path. At lower elos, Udyr is even stronger, as he just runs around and can be very hard to deal with. The words Udyr and Swishy are about as relatable as the words Trump and Benevolence. Udyr doesn't really have any glaring weaknesses outside of his lack of high impact teamfight prowess, but honestly he can still do that just by dancing in and out of the fight and zoning the enemy carries. And maybe it's just me, but I really can't stand playing versus these annoying buggers, so I really can't wait for the day I don't have to put his name on a video like this. Now, like I said in the beginning of this video, this list was pretty hard to make because there were a lot of alternative options. People like Volibear, Elise, Graves, Rek'Sai, and even my homeboy Lee Sin are really solid right now and arguably could have made this list. So I'm asking you, who would you stick in this list? Do you disagree with my choices? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, if you did like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe to me for more educational content. You can find me on Facebook, on Twitter, and catch me streaming over at twitch.tv/Foxdrop. All of those links are in the description, guys, but most importantly, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you in my next video.